Hey, baddies.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Gonna give everybody a chance to hop on. So excited for this conversation tonight. We're gonna have a good time. We have two guests with us tonight, which I'm really excited about.
Yes, I am
If
excited
you,
too.
if you are new here, my name is Jasmine. Marissa is my work wife. We are the founders of For the Breast of Us, which is a community for women of color affected by breast cancer. Tonight, we are having a conversation that was inspired by a blog I wrote last year, Overcoming the Fear of Recurrence and Embracing Our Metastatic Sisters. I'm excited for this conversation. And just a little context, if you haven't read the blog, it was published around the time that Rethink Breast Cancer posted that viral post about how 20 to 30% of women with early stage breast cancer will later develop metastatic breast cancer. And it really blew up into this big, horrible, controversial thing. And I had already written the blog a couple months ago, but it seemed like very appropriate at the time to go ahead and share it. And I just basically shared how after I was diagnosed, I really did not want anything to do with people with metastatic breast cancer. And not from like a mean place. I think it was more of a fearful place. And then my grandmother, she was diagnosed, I think the year that I had started experiencing like stabilization in my health. So it was ironic that when things finally started to come down for me, my grandmother was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. She was already a 2-time breast cancer survivor. And then it was like I had to look it in the face. And I not only had to look it in the face, I had to really, really reconcile with the fact that I too could be diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer one day, though I don't have to like accept a fate that doesn't belong to me, but it's just acknowledging that reality.
Right.
And it really changed my perspective on how I engaged with the metastatic breast cancer community. So we'll talk about being great accomplices, and we can't have this conversation without our metastatic sisters.
Right.
So Marissa, would you like to introduce our first guest?
Yes. Tell us real quick though, Jasmine, again, when your grandmother was diagnosed metastatic, where did it spread to?
In her bones.
In her bones.
Yeah. And it was interesting because she went in for a UTI, and like I don't think we would have even had a reason to check if that had not happened.
Right.
So by the grace of God, she's been in ED for a few months now, which is great. I mean, we're gonna have a conversation about like how this really kind of changed my perspective in advocacy, self-advocacy, because once my grandmother was diagnosed, I had already been through a lot and I learned a lot, and I had to use a lot of what I learned to help my mom make good decisions for my grandma, and it came into play a lot during her journey. So it's going to be a great conversation tonight. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. So everyone that is joining us, our two guests today, our first one is Deltra Kroemer. I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong. She is a home educating mama of 5 girls, Chawnte drinker, wig hoarder, and lover of singing loudly and dancing unabashedly. Since being diagnosed with triple negative metastatic breast cancer, she has focused on thriving through education, advocacy, exploring, and connecting. And our second baddie that's going to be joining us is Chawnte Randall. She is a mother and Army veteran who currently works for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. In October of 2017, Chawnte was diagnosed with stage 2 triple negative breast cancer. She had a double mastectomy and began chemotherapy in January of 2018. After completing 9 cycles of chemotherapy, Chawnte showed no evidence of disease for 11 months. Then in March of 2019, Chawnte was diagnosed with metastatic triple negative breast cancer. Since her diagnosis, Chawnte has become an advocate within the breast cancer community and participates in a variety of activities focused on mentoring young women diagnosed with breast cancer. So everyone that is watching, please say hello to Chawnte and Deltra.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, you both have your beautiful shirts on. I love it. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited. So like we said before, we can't have this conversation without having our metastatic baddies as part of the conversation. And so Chawnte has been on both ends of the spectrum. So she has that unique perspective, having been an early stager and then being re-diagnosed stage 4. And then Deltra was diagnosed with the Nevo metastatic breast cancer. So and her initial breast cancer diagnosis was stage 4. So Chawnte, having been on both sides of the spectrum, what are some of the differences you've noticed in how people have treated you?
I've noticed that people treat you different all the time when they hear you say stage 4. So if they automatically ask you like, well, you had it earlier. I thought you were done. How did you let it get to stage 4? And you're like, no, I didn't let it do anything. The cells kind of did what they did, and so you kind of just shrug and you have to be a little more tolerant and a little more patient in trying to explain that. And then I know this time when I say that it is not curable, but it's treatable, I get a lot of I'm sorry's and a lot of tears, and people are stumped, they don't know what to say. And I always tell people, like, don't be sorry. I'm not. Do I look like I'm not living my best life every day? And so it's all about the perspective and trying to change how people view stage 4 breast cancer.
Right.
Absolutely. So Deltra, now you were diagnosed with Nevo. Did you have a family history of breast cancer?
I did not. No, I did not. And I believe I've since learned that the majority of women diagnosed with breast cancer don't even have a family history, but since I did not have a family history, it was like not even anywhere in my, mind. Never had a thought about breast cancer being any part of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Melissa, you have a close relationship with the metastatic breast cancer community. And for you, I think your relationship with your best friend actually inspired you to become more engaged in the community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It did. Kind of like what you were saying before, Jasmine, when we were diagnosed, metastatic breast cancer wasn't really talked about at all. And then once my best friend Christina was diagnosed with it, I started researching a little bit more about it, wondering why, especially just because a lot of the women that we had met online were all, of course, women of color, mostly Black and Hispanic women, and they were all being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. And so I'm just like, okay, well, what's going on here? Like, why are they not researching us? There has to be some type of connection. And so that's how I really got involved into it too. So kind of similar to you, Jasmine, talking about your grandmother's story. It's like when you have somebody that's close to home that hits you, that's kind of when it's a wake-up call. But I think that's one of the reasons why Jasmine and I wanted to have this conversation today, because we want people to not wait until you get to that moment where it's a wake-up call for either yourself or somebody close to you.
Absolutely. So Chawnte, we have another Chawnte Draper. She said something, and I actually have this on our list of things to talk about because I think it's very interesting. Being an early stager that's involved in advocacy, understanding that 20 to 30% of us will be re-diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, no matter what, right?
Right.
Chawnte said that sometimes women with stage 4 breast cancer are blamed for getting stage 4 like they were negligent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, survivor's guilt is a thing, but I also wonder if like recurrent guilt is a thing, because I was one of those people that opted not to do chemo because it only lowered my recurrence rate by 2 or 3%. And I started to lose a lot more than I gained from it. And so there's always a part of me that's like, if I ever get re-diagnosed, is that going to be it? Like, is that going to be the reason why it happened?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reality is sometimes as humans, it seems like it's easy to have something or someone to blame or a cause or a reason. And life doesn't always work that way. Is that something you guys can speak to, Chawnte, Deltra?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can speak to that. And that's part of the reason why I made the treatment decisions that I made. I wasn't offered neoadjuvant chemo, but I did do chemo. I opted for the double mastectomy, like cut them off immediately, not just one, both. Because I was in a group with ladies who were having breast cancer appear in the other breast like 8 years down the road. And so I did all of these things trying to make sure that I kept thinking to myself, if it comes back, you want to make sure that you have done everything that you could potentially do. So I did holistic, I used medical marijuana, I did the gamut of everything that I thought needed to be done to make sure it did not reoccur. Mm-hmm. And so when it did come back, it was a shock to me because it was 11 months in between. I almost saw a doctor every 3 months. And, they were feeling on my breasts, which were fake, the foods. But I ended up with a lesion in my sternum. And, it's just like, we asked the oncologist, she had PET scans, and we asked him, like, what was my recurrence rate? And it was only like 0.2%. And so now that I know that there are other things that I could do, like a mammoth print and all these other things that try to guesstimate what your recurrence rate is and whether or not I had a complete, what's the PCR? Positive, what is it? Something complete response.
Yeah.
Pathologic complete response is what the word they use now, where they give you chemo at first before you have a mastectomy to make sure that your tumor shrinks. And then they go in there and they look and they're like, oh, okay, well, everything's gone. You've had a complete response. You should be good to go. That really lessens your recurrence rate. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of, when it came back, there was no real guilt, because when I went in the first time, early stage, I really thought about those decisions and I let it sit in my soul and my gut. And I made those gut decisions to say, if it comes back, it comes back. There's nothing I can really do about it. And then when it came back, I just said, well, shit, excuse my language. What am I going to tell my daughter? And, I just went into fight mode. I went into educate myself and all those other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so Deltra, how did your diagnosis change your life?
Especially because it wasn't on the map for you at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was very much a huge shock. And since we were discussing guilt, I've definitely had people, even though, mine was not a recurrence, just, you get people who say things like, oh, well, you're such a busy mom. Were you making time for yourself? Were you checking yourself, and it's like, yeah, I'm not that person who like missed my annual, checkups and things like that. And then there are just certain things that's like out of my control. Like I don't have the history and I'm under 40. So I wasn't thinking about it. And it was not on any medical personnel's, radar for me either. So it's just, bad hand dealt. But yeah, for me, I discovered a lump in my left breast myself. So obviously I was in tune with my body. And I immediately made myself an appointment. I wasn't feeling nervous about it at all, because it wasn't on my radar. It's just like, it's just going to be nothing, of course. So I went to my gynecologist. She checked it. She decided to have me go for an ultrasound. And that was when I started to get nervous. The ultrasound tech was looking very concerned. And then she called in a doctor who was there. And he, I'm just like, great. Now I'm feeling really panicky. And that was last August. And that whole month was just like, I was in a fog of scans and tests and all this. And, I was really getting in fight mode, because when you hear cancer and you're not, I mean, I think most of us don't know the stage like immediately. Right. And so I'm thinking, everyone's like, oh, well, you'll beat it. Like everyone just beats cancer now, like it's not a big deal. And so I was really getting in battle mode, and I did all these scans and things, and everything looked good. I just had this one little spot on my liver, and they were like, we're going to biopsy it. It's probably just nothing, but it wasn't nothing. So, then we had to deal with that in this new reality. But yeah, there are certainly lots of times where I felt almost blamed for it, and like, what could I have done differently? When in reality, it's like there's not really anything I could have done differently.
Right.
And so I've just accepted and made peace with that now.
Now, did anyone in the chat, did anyone have an understanding of metastatic breast cancer before they were diagnosed or before they became involved in the breast cancer community? Because like I had a cousin that died from what I know now was metastatic breast cancer, but I didn't really know that it was metastatic breast cancer. I just knew that it was breast cancer. And I wonder if, especially for communities of color, if not really understanding the difference is one of the reasons that people delay diagnosis. If all you know is that breast cancer kills, then you don't want to find out whether it's breast cancer or not. Did anyone really have an understanding of metastatic breast cancer or had heard it talked about before?
I did not. Just breast cancer. I didn't even know that metastatic breast cancer and stage 4 breast cancer were the same. Stage 4, you hear stage 4, and then you're thinking automatically, we're putting people in the grave, which I try to expect it now. But no, it's not something talked about. And in my family, I have a very distant family history, even though I don't have the genes. My great-grandmother, my grandmother's mother, died in 1982 when I was like 3. And she had some woman's cancer. And my grandma talk about it. She couldn't even specify whether it's cervical or uterine, because one is linked to breast cancer, one is not. So it's like, all of these things, and I didn't know what stage she was at all. So there were things that came up after the fact, but no, had no clue from the beginning.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing is that a lot of, like you were saying, your grandmother or even our great grandmothers, which was only maybe 50, 40 years ago, when they were diagnosed, that's what they call them. It's just women's cancer. And so everybody's like, well, I think my grandmother and my great grandmother had women's cancer, but I don't know if it was ovarian, if it was breast or anything. And I think when you start looking down and you start being like, okay, maybe so, maybe that it was breast cancer or some type of link.
So somebody has a question. I'm going to pronounce your name absolutely wrong. I'm so sorry. Maha, maybe? They want to know if you both decide to do surgeries first before chemo and radiation. So before you guys answer, I think it's very important that we say, scientifically, it has not been shown that mastectomies have better outcomes than lumpectomies. I did not know that when I made my decision. And to be honest, I don't know if I would have made a different decision. I think for me, it was like, it wronged me. Let's get rid of it.
Right.
But
that's it. They trying to kill me. They gotta go.
Yeah.
And they were big. So like, let's just remove them and just
like I don't have room for the other one to make any mistakes. So
Yeah.
Right.
But like scientifically, really, mastectomies have not been shown to lower recurrence rates. So back to the question, they wanted to know if you guys chose to have surgery or mastectomies before you did chemo and radiation?
I did not. I have actually not have I had either. I have not had radiation, and I have not. I still have both of my breasts, just because I was already stage 4, and so what you just brought up, like scientifically, the doctors are like, no, you at this point, usually they're like, you may just want to keep your breasts, which was a little disheartening, because that, when you hear it, and one of the things so many people were saying to me was like, oh, you have breast cancer, all right, just get them off as fast as you can, like just let them go. And I mean, it's hard, because it's like they're a part of you, and they're like what part of your femininity. But of course, I was like, of course I would give them up for my life. But I felt disappointed to hear that wasn't an option. But facts are facts, and my doctor was just like, we're not looking at that as a part of your treatment plan, at least right now. So I started chemo. I was about to say immediately, but not quite immediately. I actually took a whole month, which Chawnte knows this, because I was in her inbox for information. I just didn't want to make a mistake. I was so scared. I was looking at all the options. I was getting second, third opinions before starting anything, and I started immunotherapy. Yeah, so I have not had any, the cut and burn stuff. It's just been IV treatment for me thus far.
I just want to say that's why community is so important, right?
It is.
Community is so important. Being in a space where you can reach out to other women and ask questions and learn, it is absolutely so important.
Yes, very much so.
And
it is very.
I want to say to Deltra, I remember those early days in the beginning, and I could just feel your fear. I could feel how you were upset, and it just stuck with me. And so now to hear you talk, even on your bad days, and share scan news that you don't particularly care for, it's almost like a 360. It's almost like a totally different person. from what it's not that it was before, but it's just I've seen you kind of step into it and try to make peace with it, and still make positive memories with your family and friends, and still do things. So
thank you.
Journey to watch.
Thanks. Yeah. I know. I feel it too. I feel it. I feel that, even though August will be 1 year, so it's not even been a year yet that I've been a part of the breast cancer community, and I'm in groups, and it's just so gut-wrenching when you get the new metastatic women, especially, and they're just like complete panic, sometimes completely lost and hopeless feeling, and I'm just like, please breathe. Like, please breathe.
It will be okay.
Yeah, we're all in this, with each other and here. But I remember that being in a daze, not being able to sleep. Cancer was all I thought about. I would wake up and just feel like this had to have been a dream. It was the first thing I thought about when I woke up, and now, like, it's not at all. So
afterthought, it's back there when you hurt, or you get up and you can't quite do what you want to do, or you're nauseous. But other than that, I don't let it stop me.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that's what we can appreciate about both of you guys. It's like, you just keep on going. Chawnte's over here. She's been at all these conferences talking. Deltra, we see your videos and your pictures with you and your kids. So yeah, we love it.
Speaking of kids, Adrienne wants to know if you guys can discuss what it's been like having kids with a stage 4 diagnosis. So I would imagine it's a little different for both of you, because your daughter Chawnte had come from a point where she thought everything was okay. And then we're back at it again. And Deltra, you have actually small children. So can you guys speak to, I guess, Chawnte, will let you start first. Can you speak to what parenting has been like since your stage 4 diagnosis?
It's been interesting. It didn't really change our relationship. It made us closer. My daughter is now 22. She was a sophomore in college when I was initially diagnosed, and she just graduated with her bachelor's degree. And I think I didn't tell her when we first found the lump and I had the ultrasound and the biopsy, because my daughter is pregnant. So with her, you need to come correct. You need to have a plan of what it is. So she's a mini me. So I had telling people, like, I'm not putting it on the internet. I'm not doing anything, because she's 5 hours away in New York, and I want to make sure when I tell her I have this, we have a game plan, because I'm not trying to mess up this education, because she got a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we FaceTimed. I had to tell her so I could see her face, and she shed tears, and then she just soldiered up. And since then, she has sought counseling and therapy, because being in college over the years and all of the course load, plus me being ill. And then when I was diagnosed again, she said, well, Mom, because I came at the stage 4 with the same game plan, because I was diagnosed on a Tuesday. I went to an LBBC conference on a Saturday and Sunday, and I met all these ladies, and I knew all this stuff. So I told her, look, it's down stage 4. It's in my bones. It's not curable, but it's treatable. There's women living with it for 17 years that I met, and I plan to be that. And she was like, good. The first time you told me you had cancer, I prepared for the worst. So this is no different. You said you can live with it for a while. I need you to try to stay here as long as possible. And so that's my mission. That's my marching orders. I try to stay here as long as possible, exhausting all kind of means and educating myself and others in the process.
Love it. Real quick too, is that I hope that doctors are saying that to patients now, because I love what you just said. It's not curable, but it's treatable. I know when my friend Christina was diagnosed, they just automatically told her it's incurable. So, you just walk out and you're just like, okay, well, like, so then it means like in a couple of days, I'm just going to die. Like, nobody gave her any guidance from that point. So I hope that that's what providers are actually saying. It's like, yes, it's incurable, which is like, something like diabetes or something, right? Something you're going to have for the rest of your life, but we can still treat it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I hope so too. That makes all the difference. Like, just giving someone hope and making them feel like completely discouraged and like out for the count. Personally, my oncologist used those exact words when she told me that it was metastatic. And I'm just so thankful for that. Like, I was in a fog when she told me, because the lady, her personality is such that she could deliver the worst news and you still won't feel like completely downtrodden. Like, her personality is hype. She's like, yo, this is what the results show, but you're good. Like, I got your back. We're going at this. This is what we're going to do. Like, relax, get back home and relax. Don't stress, because you'll meet with me again and we're going to, discuss what we're going to do. It's it's not curable, but it's treatable. Like, that's exactly what she was like. And I felt like that made a huge difference. So I also hope that more providers are, delivering the news in that way.
Right.
And I'll say, like, I don't want to get emotional. I remember when we were at, where were we, Chawnte? We've been a lot of places together, it feels like, Chawnte. I remember being in San Antonio and being in some of those sessions and watching you take notes and having this moment where I was like, I'm taking notes, like, to take notes and to learn. You're taking notes because you want to know if this could be another line of treatment to save your life. Right. And so when graduation time came back around, and I like telling people, like, man, like, it makes my heart so happy. That's why I wanted to share more stories about women with metastatic breast cancer, so people can really understand holistically a whole person, what it means to be able to see your child graduate, what it means to be there at the weddings. And that's the kinds of things that we need to be fighting for.
Right.
That is definitely true. I fight to live another day, to make somebody else's life better and different. I look for treatments for myself and my other friends, because I'm triple negative, but there are drugs that I pay attention to that may help somebody that's HER2 negative or HR positive. It's just, I think, to me, I've always viewed education like knowledge is power, and it helps me feel like I can kind of control the situation. So the more that I know, the more that I absorb. If it's pertinent to me, I hold it. If it's not, I share it, you know, or I try to hold on to it so I can give it to someone else. But to me, knowing more about it and what I can expect, it actually helps me feel more in control of my day to day, and it helps keep me hopeful. I don't focus on that I'm stage 4, you know, and some imaginary clock back here is ticking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just moving forward into the next innovative thing and taking notes. Like you said, I'm always taking notes and talk to my oncologist. She's like, yeah, we have this, and this new drug came out. And I'm like, okay, great. We don't need it right now.
Yeah.
Got it. So that is definitely how I approach it.
So Deltra, you are a mother of five girls, all girls.
Yep. Yep,
What
all girls.
What?
Yeah, that's usually the response I get. Lay hands on me, pray for me.
Seriously.
How has that been like for you? What are the age range of your girls?
So the baby is 5 and the oldest is 14 and a half. Yeah, so they are all young, you know, and really need their mom and have like various understandings of all of this, you know. So it's certainly not been easy. I'm going to try not to get all emotional because this is the emotional stuff, you know, especially with living with this disease. I've always been really open and honest with my daughters, like about every topic. Just, you know, in age, I've always just tried to find age appropriate ways to present them with information. And so it really wasn't any different when I found out that I had cancer. And when I found out that it was stage 4, which now I'm actually a little bit thankful that I just chose not to share now with my children and not like on social media with a lot of people until I had like all the information and a plan. I didn't share. When I shared, I already knew it was stage 4. Because I was just so nervous I would share and get all of the, you know, oh yeah, you're gonna beat this, which I did just from the small amount of people I did share with, you know, and then I didn't want them just like, oh dang, like, you know, like Chawnte said, people hear stage 4 and it's like, oh, pull back the, you know, the cheering crowd or whatever, like, you know, like she said, they're just like ready to put you in the grave, like you're a dead person walking. And so, yeah, once I had all the information, you know, it was so tough and it still is. I have always felt like I've done a really good job, especially I'm a home educator. So I teach them about everything. But this was like the one thing that I just could not figure out how to talk to them about it, especially the little ones. And then I actually saw a video and I'm going to butcher her last name, Erin Ribby. She actually just passed away earlier this week. I watched the video that she did in October, and she had young children, and she, the way that she described her stage 4 cancer then was like, you know, think of it like a hibernating bear. The doctors are basically giving it drugs to keep it asleep, you know, so you're like fighting it, trying to keep it asleep. And I thought that was really clever. And so that's how I shared with my little ones. And I mean, the older ones as such, I think kids are just really resilient. And it's not a core focus. And they're so like, they just go about their little lives so much. And I'm thankful because the last thing parents want is, you know, for your kids to be so consumed and stressed that they're not able to, you know, enjoy their lives. They're not able to do well in their education. You know, no parent wants that. And so I'm just thankful. I'm really thankful that we get to have all this time together and we always have. So I just, I've always tried to be really present, and now I just do that even more. Like I literally live in the present when I'm with my children. I don't really think too much about the future, one, because it's painful, and to think about not being there, the possibility of that. Um, in the beginning, it was just really difficult to not think about that. There was one point when I was newly diagnosed where I almost could not even be with my children without like having a breakdown that I did not want to have around them. Um, the first birthday of one of my daughters after my diagnosis, I just cried and cried um, at her party. And I'm in a much better space from that now, because now the other birthdays it was like, oh, we're enjoying this time and this day. And that's kind of my perspective now. And
Yeah.
I've gotten to talk to them each one-on-one, like I said, with their various understandings of it. So I can connect with them and like see how they're feeling about it. And I'm just thankful that overall they've just been themselves. Like they feel very cared for and safe. They know that I'm not the be all end all of their existence. Also, as important as mamas are, like they have their father, and my mom is really close, and my dad, and my sister. Like they just have so much community in our homeschool community friends. So it gives me a lot of peace that I know that they have so many people around them to, love them and care for them and nurture them and
Yeah.
teach them the same values that, people who value the same things I value.
Right.
So.
And for those of you that don't know, Living Beyond Breast Cancer actually has 3 books age appropriate that are for children to talk about your diagnosis. They have 3 books on parenting as well. So if you're interested, please check out their website. I think it's a great resource, because Deltra, you have had to like find a million ways to explain one thing. So I think
Yes.
every little bit that we can do to help each other out on that spectrum is awesome.
Right. So now, Jasmine, I want to ask you a couple of questions because this talk was inspired from your blog, Overcoming the Fear of Recurrence and Embracing My Metastatic Sisters. So being an early stager and now an advocate, what have you learned that has helped you navigate your grandmother's diagnosis?
Man, I think being diagnosed at a young age kind of gave me the tools to help my grandmother. And I think one of the biggest things was self-advocacy. Mm-hmm. So I was initially misdiagnosed at 25, not nursing, but everyone's like, it's a clogged milk duct. And I'm like, I don't know. And then they said, with like inconclusive everything else, they said, well, maybe it's a breast infection, take some antibiotics. And I chose not to do that because like I didn't have any signs of infection. Besides, my breast was swollen, I had discharge, that kind of thing. And about 6 months later, I get to my OBGYN. She's like, yeah, something's not right. And then we start the testing process until I get an accurate diagnosis. That experience of not being listened to, and that experience of having to push to get an accurate result, because no answer is not an answer. Like if they no, but if it's inconclusive, like we still got some work to do.
Right. If they're like, I don't know, it's like, okay.
Yeah. But with my grandma, I mean, it was crazy. My grandmother, she had been diagnosed with, she was hormone receptive one time and she was triple negative another time. And so like we all know, those are 2 different treatment plans. They're treated totally different. And I remember like going up to the hospital one day with my mom while my grandmother was in there. And my mom was telling me that they were going to start like the chemo pills or something. And I was like, how can we do it? They didn't do a biopsy. And like, we really, and I was like questioning myself, like, we have to do a biopsy, right? Like, sure, we don't do a biopsy. And like, lo and behold, the doctor was willing to guess at what her receptors were. And he actually guessed wrong.
Like he's just going to pick it from out the sky or something. Like,
well, it's more than likely going to be triple negative since it was triple negative last time, and she was actually hormone resistant. So there's something that they could actually do, and now she's NED. So I just imagine having not gone through my experience, I don't think we would have questioned it. It's like it's cancer, and that's what it is, and we're going to do what he said. But because I had that experience, I was able to ask more questions and really help my mom make good decisions for my grandma.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
You are absolutely correct. That's the biggest thing is self-advocacy. And yes, it's okay to question the oncologist. Like I just finished telling a friend, okay, now it's time for you to get a second opinion. Check out this article, ask your doctor about this. If the tumor didn't shrink, maybe you need a PARP inhibitor, maybe you need this, that, and the third. I said, because every doctor can't be everywhere on top of everything.
Absolutely.
So my job as my patient who's really in charge of my own healthcare to make sure I go and seek and find this information, and then I run it past them, and we'll have a meeting of the minds.
Right.
I just, a lot of women, and especially African-American women, we've kind of grown up with that God complex, or, we think they know more than us, which technically they kind of do because they went to medical school, but that doesn't give them the right to arbitrarily make decisions and not explain stuff to you or not follow the standards of care that they would give everyone else.
Yes.
Yeah. And I always tell people, I'm like, go get a second opinion. I'm like, the second opinion is going to tell you two things. They're either going to agree with your first opinion, or they're going to tell you something else different. Like, and then you can weigh your options from that point. I mean, I know when I was diagnosed, I got a second opinion, and the second opinion that I got, they said, well, we agree with what the first person said. We would tweak it a little bit, that we wouldn't give you this much chemo, but otherwise we would still do it the same. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, bam. Now I know what I want to do. Let me decide who I'm going to go have this treatment with. But especially with like a diagnosis with cancer, I mean, any type of diagnosis, go get a second opinion. And if the doctor that you're seeing says that you shouldn't get a second opinion, or they get offended, then they really shouldn't be your doctor in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have two oncologists now. I had to fire a couple, and I finally got to a good one. He left. And then I've gotten to my current oncologist. He was just dragging his feet on some issues. And I said, you know what? I can do one better. And I think I was on the YSC talk today about telehealth, and part of it is self-advocacy in a different space. And maybe some people not feeling comfortable with the telehealth appointments, but we have a right to be treated properly. And I tell people all the time, I know so much more now because I'm an advocate, and because I do research, and because I go out and I'm learning all these different things. It's asking a lot for us to have those things in the back of our mind as we're going through the experience. But again, I think that's where community is really important, because where you may not know to ask questions, your breast cancer baddies know, like, that's not right.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, so Jasmine, in the blog, you also said pretending metastatic breast cancer didn't exist didn't really stop it from existing. So can you explain to us, like, what does that mean to you, and what does that just mean overall in general?
So, being an early stager, the first person I met that had metastatic breast cancer was the beautiful Ariel, who died last year, I believe. And she legit walked up to me at the YSC summit, and she's like, "Hi, my name is Ariel, and I have metastatic breast cancer." And I remember being like, okay, I don't know what to do with that information. When my grandmother was diagnosed, it was like my worst fear at my doorstep, right? Because the worst fear is that, well, what I realized was, well, I'm gonna go back a little bit. It was like having my worst fear at my doorstep. And I had spent a lot of time pulling myself away from the metastatic community. Like, maybe they need separate support groups. Maybe we don't all need to be in the same chats. Maybe we there's do it. And then to have it in my face where then like I'm helping make the decisions and I'm helping like navigate this experience, and then suddenly it's like that could be me, and acknowledging that it could be me without panicking about it and without it stressing me out, but just accepting the fact that for any of us as early stagers, that could be us.
Right.
And for us to pretend that the metastatic breast cancer community doesn't exist doesn't mean it can't still one day be us. So that's what I was meaning when I said that. Like, pretending it doesn't exist doesn't stop it from existing. And it really, if anything, just does a disservice to the community that needs us the most.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Chawnte and Deltra, did you want to add on to that as well?
Yeah. You could say we're almost like, I call us the boogie monster of the breast cancer community. Stage 4 is the boogie monster. We're the black sheep, because so many people are afraid. And people ask me, did I feel like when I became stage 4, could I still mentor early stage women through their decisions? And I'm like, absolutely, because now I'm going to make sure they have, these treatments, they have these options, these scans, they check this, they check that. All of the ins and outs. Sometimes I feel like I'm putting them on information overload. But again, like I say, I wish it was more of the common discussion where when you get an early stage diagnosis, yes, we do believe that it's curable. However, 30% will become metastatic. However, this is what we're going to do to prevent that, or these are the things we have in our arsenal to work towards it. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely feel like we should have a collaboration, just like we're all in a group together. And even when an early stager asks a question, if I've had the treatment or I've had experience with it or the side effect, I share it. Oftentimes I don't say I'm stage 4 unless someone says I'm stage 4. Oh my God, what I'm going to do? And I say, okay, I'm stage 4. Do I look like I'm having a hard time? This is what you can do. Good luck and blessings on your journey. You can inbox me, so forth and so on. So it's definitely something that it should be a conversation that should be had from early stagers and metastatic breast cancer patients, just because it is a fear. And by talking about it, it will alleviate some of the anxiety, some of the guesswork, and stuff like that, because people often ask, like, what were your symptoms, or did you have a symptom, what made you ask this question, so that people can really be more in tune, or even push for MRIs or PET scans or what have you. So I feel like it is a scary thing, definitely, but it is something that should be faced and collaborated on together.
Yeah.
So I think the other part of this conversation is like kind of overcoming the fear of recurrence. And I think you spoke to it really well, is that education, like knowledge is power, right? Yeah. And we inherit our fears, like similar to children, how they inherit the fears to their parents. And so if you weren't scared and your early stage friends are scared, you're scared now.
Right.
But if you really take the time to engage with a community, and you take the time to learn about the disease, and you take the time to learn what you can do differently, and then to also understand that there's nothing you can do to make it happen,
right?
Or really to make it not happen. You just do your best, and then the chips fall where they may.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, it's like, if I remember someone saying, like, if you can make peace with the worst case scenario, you're good.
Yeah. That is my motto. I always expect the worst. And when I get something even marginally above it, I'm ecstatic.
So for me, I had to think about, like, if the worst, now you talked about the ticking clock earlier. So for me, I feel like we all have a ticking clock. I think if you're in the breast cancer community, you're a little bit more aware of it than others. For me, that's a blessing. I think it makes me live with a little bit more urgency and a little bit more intent. So for me, like, I don't have kids yet. But I am getting ready to go through a divorce. And so when I think about what is my worst fear, it's not as much as dying as much as it's dying and like that being it. Like I just like I contributed nothing. I disappeared off the face of the earth, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I became clear about what my fear was around death, it helped me live differently.
Mm-hmm.
So even now, I feel like if I died today, I feel like I at least put enough intent into my God ideas that I could be like, Jesus, I tried. Or maybe I did, but enough. Obviously, I would have done enough because you took me, or whatever the case is. But I think really coming to grip, like, what is that? What is it the fear of? Because you guys are living proof, and there are so many other women that are living proof that metastatic breast cancer, it isn't always a death sentence. And you spoke about that. Was that yesterday? Chawnte, you spoke about that and giving women hope and being like, hey, like, this is not as bad as it, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last decade, a lot of progress has been made.
Yeah, and I think that outlook, because there is a lot of things to do. And like you said, I agree with you. When I became stage 4, I had to dig inside and see, well, okay, you go about making your final arrangements because you don't know. And as I started thinking about my life and looking at my life as a body of work, first, my daughter is my greatest treasure and my greatest accomplishment. So whatever that child does or that young woman does from here on out is going to be amazing. I'm satisfied. The interactions that I had with my friends and my family, I feel that I've done good and I've left a mark on this world. So anything from this point forward is a bonus, and I wake up joyful every day. And so that helps me not focus on the doom and gloom or, time is ticking or am I missing or I'm going to die and I'm going to miss something. No, I set a goal and I go for it, and it helps you cut the bull crap. It helps you slim the things that are unnecessary, that stress you out, that don't go with your vibe. So it actually helps you once you come to grips with it, you just move forward. I guess it just becomes, I wake up every day. I don't worry about, am I going to die in my sleep? So that's one of those things that I've made sure that I've been doing. So but I don't want to hog because I like to talk. So Deltra, I want to.
I'm enjoying listening.
Well, Deltra, I know you have 5 daughters, and so I know that Chawnte this past weekend at the Living Beyond Breast Cancer Metastatic Conference, she had talked about how she kind of prepared her family, even though maybe they didn't want to talk about it, but she's still, like, this is factual, this may happen, let's prepare. Have you done that with your family as well? Or have you kind of just tiptoed around it just because your kids are a little bit younger?
Yeah, I've definitely not addressed that as head on as some people. I really have not. But it's a good reminder that I need to sit down and write down some things, but that I'm always procrastinating. Yeah, it's like they know that it is, a reality. They know what things are unfortunate possibility with, this disease, and especially with being triple negative. Yeah, we discussed it in the beginning because you're just learning about, what you're dealing with. But otherwise, we just, like Chawnte said, you just start moving forward. You don't, focus on the negative, or you don't just sit and sulk. You just keep on living your life.
Right. And I think what Chawnte just said in the comments, she said end of life estate planning is imperative, period. And a lot of folks do not do this. And that's true. Even before you're diagnosed with something that's so life-changing, a lot of us have to figure out, how to do that, and that we need to, get on top of it regardless.
That's very true. It's as a society, we're just not acknowledging or discussing death enough. And it's not like, oh, you got cancer, you're metastatic, and now you're gonna die. Like, everyone has an expiration date.
Exactly.
It's like death is a part of life, so we should all, prepare for it, talk about it, much more. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that recently because I recently had a cousin pass away, and like many other people, like, the family had to do a GoFundMe, and it's just like, we didn't have anything plans, but why? Because it's not like we don't know that we're all going to die at some point, and there's no guarantee, and we know that people die of all kinds of things at any age. So yeah.
And I did mine just because my daughter is in charge. She is 22. So I tried to make as much explicit as possible in my iPad. She has usernames and passwords to everything. She knows where stuff is. And then I just didn't want it to be like, people in African American community. I don't want people to fight. I don't want there to be
Yes.
I don't want somebody trying
Absolutely.
to jump and overturn the will. And I wanted to make sure that was taken care of, and we could just move on, and I have those conversations like in 5-minute excerpts though with my mom.
Right.
You still have life insurance on? And she's like, no, you're grown. I'm like, well, maybe you should get a policy. No, I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, okay, I know you're going to empty out your pockets to make sure I'm good in the end. I don't want you to waste all of your retirement trying to make sure that the last whatever I have is okay. So go ahead and get a policy. I'll sign off and just take in the information and then swallow it, and let's just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Chawnte, you spoke to this a little earlier, so I'll ask you this, Deltra. What does a life well lived look like for you?
Gosh, you know what? I'm still kind of figuring that out. Honestly,
karaoke. I can answer for you.
That is
awesome. I was gonna say Jasmine loves karaoke. So yeah,
I do karaoke as much as I can, and dance as much as I can, and drink tea as much as I can, and that feels like big things for me. But it was definitely hard to be diagnosed, and being a mom has very much felt like my purpose. It's not felt like my whole identity, but it certainly felt like my purpose. And so it was hard to feel like I may have to come to terms with like not getting to fully raise my children, because then in my head, I was just like, well, then I didn't, I'm not getting to fulfill my purpose. What the heck is that? But I'm just, I don't know exactly what my purpose is yet. I just know that I'm doing the best that I can with, what I'm given to do, including with my children. And like I said earlier, I just have a peace. I, know that I am not like completely essential to like their existence and their being okay in life and them becoming who they're supposed to be. And someone, when I was first diagnosed, someone had mentioned that in one of the breast cancer Facebook groups, where there was a thread where people were discussing, like their experiences if they had a history and they had like lost their mom or whatever. And them just kind of realizing that they were okay and that they figured life out, or that there were just like all of us adults. I mean, I grew up, I've thankfully had my mother all my life, and, she's still here with me, but there's a lot that I learned on my own, or that I learned in adulthood. And so I just trust that my children will, do the same. They'll figure things out and they'll be okay. But I do try and live my best life, which includes karaoke and being very present and traveling when I can. Like that's been a big thing for me before COVID, before the Rona. mess that up. I had took it upon myself because I was like, I don't want to be a mom who waits until their children are grown to do things for herself. So I had started like taking little getaway trips just for me.
There you go.
Yeah, before I was diagnosed. And so I've just like, I'll just continue doing those kind of things. I got to figure out how to be on Chawnte's level of advocating. So
These men. We talk about the same circles. I'm like, I know I'm tired. You got to be tired.
Right.
This week was rough. My chemo was bumped by a week because of my platelets, and they dipped again, and I've been sleeping 14 hours a day. And then all of a sudden, but I want to make sure my new purpose now, besides my daughter, is to advocate as loud and as much as I can. And so, I was taking naps in between of all these events and all these meetings, because I feel like what we need to do, especially as women of color, is to get the word out and to change the statistics and to have these conversations so that we are approachable. We don't see a lot of ourselves in the media. Or, even at the LBBC conference, even though it was a metastatic conference, a lot of those posters did not show African-American women. And so I feel like it's almost my passion and my duty to make myself available and make myself one of the examples to raise my voice for as long as I can.
Yeah. Now I have a question for all three of you. And I want to know, what advice do you have for early stagers? And Jasmine, I'll let you go first. And then Chawnte and Deltra, we can hear from you on what your advice would be.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that's the perfect way to close out our hour. I can't believe it's already been an hour.
Right?
Enjoyed it.
I'm like, going and going.
I'm so glad everyone was able to make this. This was nice. I think the biggest advice that I would have, and I'm going to say this because I know my girls are going to say some other key points, but I am really going to encourage the early stage community to connect and engage. You are going to miss out on some incredible people if you let fear of something that may or may not happen stop you from making those connections. Knowledge is power, as Chawnte said so very nicely earlier. So my biggest advice would be make those steps and connect. We're in this together.
Yep.
I would say know your body and advocate for yourself. Like Jasmine experienced, when there's something not right and it's not right, you should really push. I don't care if they say it's all in your mind. I'm not saying be a hypochondriac, but I'm saying push, push if something doesn't feel right. Even if it's a weird symptom, take pictures, record, and go to multiple doctors just to make sure that you find out what's going on with you. Stay in tune with your body.
Deltra?
Great advice. I think what I would say to early stagers, which honestly I've not, outside of our Baddies group, had that much interaction with them because I've never really been like a part of that community, being de novo. But I would probably quote myself in the blog post that I wrote for you guys. Ignoring stage fours, doesn't, I mean, it doesn't, make it disappear. Like racism, pretending something doesn't exist doesn't make it not there. And it just, ignoring us just means aside from just missing out on the most awesome people, you are avoiding care for all of us, because the reality is that you may end up joining our club and focusing, coming together for cure instead of ignoring and like, okay, I got through this, beat this breast cancer thing, I'm done with this. Just coming together means cure. It could mean cure for all of us, those of us with it who have it one day, because 20 and 30% of you will. It's only to your benefit to not ignore stage 4 people. And it really is like, what do they say? the best members in the club that you never wanted to be a part of. Stage
Yeah.
relays are so awesome. And I do get the fear. And I even, me and a friend were discussing it, and it's hard to admit. I've had my days where I'm like, this is really hard being in a stage 4 group and seeing the death and scrolling and seeing that someone you had communicate with who's, you know, an NPCer just passed away. And I've unfollowed pages and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's just like my black skin. Like, it's not something I can escape.
Yeah.
And I invite other people to like not just run away, you know, because something's hard.
And, you know, I think that you said what I was thinking of saying earlier, or you kind of alluded to it. I feel like being an accomplice and helping with advocacy about metastatic breast cancer is also a form of self-advocacy. That's how I feel about it, because I do understand that I could very well be in that position. And so, like, we are going to lose a lot of our metastatic sisters. And if they are the only ones sounding the horn, what are we going to do if we're next in line? So I absolutely think advocacy and being an accomplice for metastatic sisters, to me, it's as deep as self-advocating.
Mm-hmm. And I love in the post that Chawnte made in the private group today, where you could kind of tell she was kind of being a mom and going off on everybody, but kind of did it soft, where she was just like, look, y'all need to get involved into these advocacy programs. I'm tired of going here. I don't see enough of us. It's just like, yes. I feel like Jasmine and I say that all the time. And I know sometimes it can feel to people that we're beating a dead horse. So to have somebody else say it and be like, I'm going to these things, I'm going to these conferences, I'm here at these panels. Like, I need you guys to be here with me too. And some of it's just really easy. And that's why we try to post a lot of it, to give everybody the opportunity and make sure that we have more of us at the table, because we definitely need to be researched. I don't care what kind of research that is. And I will keep saying it even to the day that I'm dying. We need to be researched.
Yep.
And we need to make sure that our experiences, our narratives are a part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. That's Black, yellow, brown, etc. Our experiences are valid and they can inform the way that things are being done. So yes, Marissa, what was your one piece of advice for early stagers?
My advice, I definitely will agree with all of you guys. Definitely don't shy away. Learn so much. I know that, you know, when I look at some of the women that we know who are metastatic, I don't even remember that you are metastatic until you post something or you message us and say like you're not feeling good or whatever, and then I'm just like, oh. And I don't know how that makes you guys feel. I know when I was going through treatment, I used to tell my friends all the time, treat me like I'm normal. Don't treat me like I'm somebody different. Like, just treat me like I'm normal. And you are missing out on a lot of great women, great stories, just to get to know them personally, because they may have metastatic breast cancer, but that is not them at all. They have completely, totally in different lives. And just, you know, like we said before, knowledge is power. Like, learn more. There's so much other information out there. Yeah, I just really want people to engage more, because we made some really great friends, and I would hate for other people to miss out on this.
Right? It's like you go through life and you're never, I mean, we all have the reality in the back of our mind that like we're not immortal, and no one loses a friend and is like, darn, I sure wish I didn't take time to get to know and love that person because, you know, they ended up dying at 20 in a car accident or something, you know?
Right.
And I just feel like it's not really any different with us. I mean,
that is very true.
Missing out.
Yeah. And maybe even people hearing your stories, that will make them advocate more for themselves and their health. You know, you're not saying like, oh, I kind of found this lump, but I'm just going to wait a couple of months before I get seen. But then they hear your stories or watch or have a friend like you and be like, oh, okay, well, let me go get that checked just to make sure. Yeah. And, you know, it may not be anything, but the fact that you're actually taking the initiative to go do something, like that's one of the things, you know, that Jasmine and I always say. It's just like, know your body and be an advocate for yourself.
And that's funny you should say that. You don't know how many high school friends, Facebook friends, friends from childhood, they tag me when they go and get their mammogram. They tag me. I'm not joking. And I'm praying for great results. And they'll come back and send me a text message. everything was good, or maybe I need to go and have another one. You know what I'm saying? So it's helping. Sometimes we just move a little slower than we want to.
Yeah, no one's helping me. They just come up to me at events and tell me about their boob issues. I'm like, go get it.
Please go see the doctor.
Something's wrong. Go get it. All right, Baddies. So thank you so much, Chawnte and Deltra. Don't log off. Go backstage so we can take our episode selfie. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is a great conversation. And we'll see you guys next month.
Yes. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Deltra.
Good night. Thanks for having us.